The Move tool is possibly the most versatile tool in Sketchup. You can move surfaces and edges, manipulate shapes, move groups, autofold geometry, make copies and arrays, all with this one tool. Let's start by understanding basic move functions, and we'll assemble this puzzle as an example. Open the exercise file if you'd like to follow along. With the Move tool, you want to be deliberate in how you move objects and use Sketchup's inferences to help you. Think of a starting and ending point. Let's select this puzzle piece and move it from this corner exactly to the frame corner. For the next piece, we could move it meaningfully from several corners. We could snap to the frame corner or to the other puzzle piece. Again, what is important is to think of a good starting and ending point. Because these pieces are thin, I do need to be careful in selecting the top edge, or I might accidentally move a piece that doesn't sit properly in the frame. But if that happens, I can undo or move this again from the correct top corner. The rest of the puzzle will be easy to finish. Remember to select the pieces you are trying to move first. Now it's your turn. Assemble the basic puzzle, and then we've got a second puzzle for you to practice on as well. Our next example shows how the geometry you are moving can get in the way, obstructing the point you are trying to move to. Trying to move this red block from this view covers up the corners on the green block. Orbiting to a different view will often help, but another useful tip is to toggle X-ray mode on. Now you can see through geometry and snap directly to inference points. You may find it useful to create a keyboard shortcut for X-ray mode to quickly toggle it on and off. You can create keyboard shortcuts through SketchUp's preferences. When using the Move tool, it is generally the best practice to pre-select the objects or groups you want to move, as we have been doing. However, if nothing is selected, the Move tool will auto-select as you hover around. This is true of groups, of edges, surfaces, and actually endpoints. In fact, endpoints cannot be selected with the selection arrow, so the only way to move endpoints is by auto-selecting them with the Move tool. Make sure nothing is selected and try moving some of the edges and points around on this sheet of paper. As you do, you'll notice this hexagon is still behaving as one shape. If you want to move the corners around individually, you could right-click on this polygon and explode it into the segments. By now, you've surely noticed these red tick marks that show up on groups or components. These will usually show up on any side of a group, depending on where your cursor is. These tick marks allow you to rotate the group about its center. Click on one and rotate the group around. And if you hover near the rotation gizmo that appears, you can also snap to every 15 degrees. We'll learn to use the actual rotate tool in a later course, but these are a handy way to move and rotate groups around. Before we move on to the next exercise, practice using the Move tool and the rotation marks to turn all these pencils vertical. They don't need to be perfectly vertical, but rotate them and move them up in the blue direction until they are hovering just above the desk surface. Something like we are showing here. In the next example, we'll move these into the glass jar. To move these pencils into the jar, we're going to practice something we call a relative move. Rather than clicking on the pencil itself, we'll first select the pencil and then use the Move tool to click somewhere near the pencil, but still on the desk, and move it over until it sits somewhere in the jar. The important part is that we are still clicking somewhere on the same desk surface. If I select another pencil and click somewhere on the desk surface to start moving it, you can see how hovering around the model moves the pencil based on that initial point to whatever point I hover over. You still need to be aware of the starting point and ending point, even for a relative move. We may not be snapping endpoints together, but we are still moving the selected object from one exact point in space to another exact point in space. Now that you know different ways to use the Move tool, practice by rearranging the various elements on this desk. Restack the blocks or puzzle pieces. Place pens in the jar or around the desk. Change the shapes on the paper. Practice selecting and moving objects, or moving them by auto-selecting them with the Move tool. Get very comfortable with the Move tool in this example, and in the next lesson, we'll practice moving edges and geometry to reshape your models.